Favorite books tells us a lot about people. When someone tells you what their favorite book is, you can get a sense of what makes them tick. You can get a sense of what their vision is, how they see the world, and what their underlying assumptions and perspectives are. Well, that's also especially the case when it comes to sci-fi books, because sci-fi books often talk about things like a utopia that they believe will happen in the future, or a dystopia where things go wrong. And so if you are able to take a particular liking to a work of sci-fi fiction, then you can actually gain something about somebody's mind. You can glean something about somebody's mind from that information. So if somebody tells you their favorite book, you can learn a lot from them, and especially if it's a sci-fi book, because it tells you really about their worldview and where they're coming from. Now, Stephen Miller actually recently revealed what his favorite book was. It's a sci-fi book, and that tells us quite a bit about how his mind works and what's really going on in there. I'll go through that in this video. So Stephen Miller revealed during a discussion with somebody that his favourite book is a work of science fiction written by a French author in 1973 called The Camp of the Saints. And it won't surprise you to know that that book is essentially about a future dystopia that becomes a utopia because of how immigration is dealt with. Now, in the book, it suggests that there are a huge number of people on their way from India to Europe. And there are actually something like 1,000 boats with 1,000 people on each boat, so 1 million people altogether, making their way towards Europe from India. This is written by a French author who had very strong racist undertones in his writings, certainly in this book. And this set the world into chaos, into pandemonium. How is Europe going to cope with 1 million Indians about to arrive on their doorstep? And it found that, the people who had the answers, the people who were able to fight this wave of immigrants turning up at their shores, were the ones who were able to do something, almost develop a superpower that the other people weren't, which was to switch off their empathy. Empathy was seen as a real flaw. Think about what people like Elon Musk and others have said exactly about this. And instead, they're able to actually engage in violent reprisals against the Indians who turned up, including killing them, and eventually find their way to a free and liberated society. So, pretty sick, really, but that was his favourite book and his ultimate utopia. So you see, he has this fantasy about a world not just in which immigrants are combated, but in which immigrants are coming. So he almost has a fantasy about waves turning up and him and the people who he considers to be heroes as fighting those waves directly, head on, in violent ways. So this tells us about the depth of his preoccupation with immigration. It's not a small thing. It's not just a policy. I mean, immigration is one of many policy areas that somebody who advises the president or any major politician might be interested in. But it is the central raison d'etre for his politics. He has a fixation with it. And when somebody reaches the level of fixation, then you know there's something about yourself that you're really dealing with there. He's grappling with something within his own psyche. So his fixation with immigration, as evidenced with the kind of weird nature of the book that he's interested in, tells us that this goes beyond just sort of working out policy, thinking about how to improve people's lives. It goes way beyond that. There's something deep inside, a grudge, a vendetta, something that is driving him. And we learnt what that something was from his uncle a number of years ago, who came out and revealed the fact that Stephen Miller's family comes from an immigrant background. They came originally from Belarus, Russian-speaking part of the world. And when his ancestors arrived in this country, they weren't in any way able to speak English. Right? They spoke Polish and Yiddish and other things. They were fleeing persecution. They arrived from that country in America, and they engaged in chain migration. So when The father arrived, they brought brothers, they brought sisters. So there was a whole chain of people who eventually became the Millers, who basically lived in the States through a chain of immigration. Now, the ferocity, the utter vitriol with which Miller seems to be preoccupied with immigrants almost certainly relates to something that he hates in himself. So this actual origin story of the Miller family and where he came from is something that it appears he probably detests. He doesn't want to be reminded that he's actually from immigrant stock. He doesn't want to connect in any way to his immigrant roots. So what people do when there's a part of them that they absolutely can't bear, they disown it and they displace it. They basically project it onto other people. So you can't really directly hate yourself. You can't hate a part of yourself and keep it inside, so you have to push it outside. So he basically projects the hatred of immigrants out to others. But it's really a projection of his fundamental hatred towards himself, towards his heritage, and who he really is. People who are comfortable in life, people who lead lives that are contented, tend to be content with all the different parts of themselves. They tend to be content with the different parts of their heritage, all the parts of their story, good and bad, and they find a way to make peace with all aspects of who they are. But not people who have a limited emotional range like Stephen Miller. Clearly he does. And he's projected a part of himself that he cannot bear to acknowledge, to stand. He cannot even acknowledge itself that it exists. And so what he does is he projects that hatred onto other people around him. And that turns into an absolutely vehement opposition to immigration in all its forms. So much so that it even penetrates his cultural time, it even penetrates his downtime. It penetrates his interest in culture, which is also about defying and defeating and destroying and attacking immigrants. So this just tells us just how deep-rooted his philosophy is. And it's fundamentally an attack on himself, where he comes from, and what his true background really is. I hope you like my video. As a psychiatrist who loves politics and economics and philosophy, I love to make videos like this, and you can really help promote this video to other people and get it on your feed more by liking and commenting and subscribing to the video as well. We have a wonderful community of people here who comment and support each other through this very traumatic period of world history that we're going through right now. I also hope you consider becoming a subscriber to the channel and also subscribing to my e-newsletter. There's a link in the description, and that way we can stay in touch outside the channel, so you can keep abreast of all of the content that I'm making on an ongoing basis. The latest of which actually is my latest book called We the People. Very, very proud of this book. It's actually a novel, a fiction book written by myself and the famous award-winning author T.J. McGregor. Together we wrote a book about what the future might look like. Bit of a dystopian novel, but what might happen if autocracy goes to its next stage, AI predicting the potential end of humanity. I actually made a video about that, it really happened. And how things might pan out in this dystopian world, and actually how a band of committed, passionate, progressive people managed to change the trajectory, and not in the way that you think. It's not just by running a candidate and opposing the autocrat, but actually by deepening the democracy that we have and engaging in a real participatory form of democracy that sort of shifts the needle and gets us back to basics and helps us sort of rebuild our democracy. And that's within the context of a really compelling, gripping story, a bunch of fascinating characters, and I assure you, you will not be able to sort of stop turning the page until you get to the end of the book. That's what all the reviewers have said so far. Lots of people love it, and I hope you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, any of the global Amazon bookstores out there. Please do order your copy of We the People. Just put We the People Russell Razak and you'll be able to find it inside Amazon as well. Also, I hope you consider becoming a member of the channel. You can subscribe to a couple of different membership levels. All members of the channel also get some free ebooks that I produce once a month. You can buy those ebooks too from russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com, and every month I produce a new ebook on that channel, which is really about, these are the non-fiction books I produce with my team, which is really about how to learn about the world around us and the psychologies of the people who govern us, but also how to learn about ourselves, deepen our own self-awareness in a way that helps us navigate this difficult world we're in right now. So those are sort of self-help books that are produced every month, and if you're a member of the channel, you get a sort of 100% discount on those books every month. Otherwise, you can go to russellsbooks.com, as I say, and buy them anytime you like. I really hope you can become a part of this community, as I say. So this sort of supportive community, validating and helping each other, is really worth being a part of, and I hope you can join us as we all join forces to create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.